Hey guys, I want to first off say thank you for everyone who subscribed and started following this channel. I apologize for the delay in my first video here. It's just been a little bit of crazy in the last 3 weeks or so, and just been doing my best to catch up. I finally got some time this morning. One of my staff members and team members came in this morning to help me open, so I could just do a quick video for you guys today. So I'm gonna do my best to keep it within time. I tend to ramble on when I talk. But without further ado, today's topic, I actually want to talk about kind of how about I financed a business and also indirectly addressing something that I saw on Reddit. And I know a lot of you actually came over from the Reddit page. And I just want to first off and say that I did not post on the Reddit page. I did not know who did. I only found out because a customer pointed it out to me. And then after trying to find it for a few days, someone found the link for us and then shared it with us. So then I went through and looked at the page, and I really appreciate all the comments you have given, and for those of you who came over. But one thing that I saw really troubled me. It was a comment about the whole me stealing money from investors, and we won't go into the finer details of that statement there, but I actually want to address that overall. So I won't go into full details because, I'll obviously have to make you guys sign, agreements and stuff. But overall, I'll discuss about how I went about financing the business and what went into probably that statement there. And so first and foremost, in the beginning, I definitely did not have the funds needed to properly open the store. So I'll go over that in a future video about what's needed to properly start a game store or land center or business like Gamers Heaven. But in the beginning, I was definitely not in the right mindset because I probably had between my retirement and the bonus that I had, probably roughly around in the very, very low 5 figures. So nothing crazy. And it's not the amount of money you would put in to open a brick and mortar store of all things, because with a physical location, you have operating expenses, you have furnishings, you have to get your retail items, staffing, months of operations to cover. It's not like if you were starting a new product company or service company where you could start with very small because you're developing it as you go. With a physical location, whether a restaurant or retail store, you kind of need everything up front. And so I didn't have that in the beginning, but what I did was at least I was able to find a person that was willing to invest into the company if I showed them a proof of concept. So I built my business plan literally right out of college, and I kept refining it for the better part of 4 or 5 years after college. And then, but it was tough finding investors. It was tough finding a bank who would loan me money because, I didn't have any assets. I really didn't have experience. It was just kind of like, to them, just a gamer trying to open up a business. But I eventually found an individual who was willing to give me a chance. He was like, with the money you have, build a proof of concept. If you hit these small milestones, I'll consider investing. So at the time, I was like, you know what? I could take a break from work, try it for a few months, see if it works out. And if it doesn't, go back to my company. And so I did. And I started off with a very small portion of the business plan. Like, it was just a 1,000 square foot location. And you guys can go back and see it. If you go to my early videos in this channel, you'll be able to see kind of how bare bones it actually was. But I built it, gained a small following, and thought I did enough to prove my worth to him. But he actually ended up investing into somewhere else. And so I had to make a decision whether or not to keep continuing. And so luckily enough, in the first 2 months of operating the store, I found some customers that were coming in. They liked what I was doing. They heard about what I was trying to do and what I was trying to build and how different it was from some of the other game shops around. And so they decided to invest into the company. Now, it's a different topic in the future, but how I went about divvying up my shares and not putting in certain things definitely came back to bite me. But that'd be a different topic. But over the course of the last 5 years, I won't go into full detail just because it would be a long story if that was it. But over the course of the last 5 years, we've had investors come in. We've had a couple leave due to some disagreements and stuff. So we had other people buy them out, including myself. So they've come and gone. And I would say that another thing that factors into it, Dave, to consider was I was consistently operating at a net loss. Because if anything, especially in the first few years of running my business, I was always playing catch up because I didn't start off the business the way I wanted it to. Trust me when I say this, like the amount of money that you would need to start any brick and mortar is anywhere between 100 to a couple $100,000. I did not start with that. So for the better part of the first 5 years of running my store, it's always been just playing catch up to my business plan. And then whatever came in got reinvested. And so for those of you that might be kind of off put about, whoa, you operated at net loss in the last 5 years, most businesses operated at a loss for the first few years of businesses, statistically. But in our case, I didn't have the right setup right from the beginning. Even now, when you look at the current store, if I could have started off my business like this 5 years ago, different tale, different story right now. But that wasn't the case. I had to build it from the ground up. And it's a startup too. So, but fast forward, I think I'll go ahead and address the little statement that I saw on Reddit about me stealing money from investors. Because I think a lot of you will understand, for most people who understand the nature of investment, it's an investment. It's not a 100% guarantee. The money could end up, if you invest in a business, it can end up working out. They make profit, they grow, you make money off of it, you make dividends off of it, or you can sell it at a higher value. But the opposite is also true. The valuation can go down because the business is deteriorating, or the business can just go out of business and you lose everything. And so that's definitely a high probability of what could happen as well. So it is a gamble at the end of the day. Now, in my case, all the money that did come in went right back into the business. It went into the operational costs, expansions, equipment purchases, and everything. I apologize for that quick little hiccup. I did have a couple customers that walked in, so I had to help them out really quick. So unfortunately, we went into the hours of operation. So I'm going to do my best to wrap this up here. But along that topic, I believe I mentioned about the investments. Yes. So while playing those during those catch-up periods, we did operate at a loss, but everything went back into the store, like I said. You can go back and just look at my 5-year video, and that's just proofs in the pudding. Everything just went back into the business, whether it was physical or operational side of things, to cover staff, cover expenses, cover the loan payments and everything. But to address that issue, that statement that was made on there directly, obviously it was either a former business partner or someone who heard from a business partner and just assumed that I stole money. So I'm going to address it like this. When COVID hit, so back in March when we were forced to close down, we still had expenses. The building expenses were still accruing, the utilities were accruing, and then the loans and the credit payments that, credit cards and the special finance loans that I did have to take out to help cover stretches of time when we needed extra funds or injections of cash so we can keep the business going and everything, were piling up. And unfortunately, when you're operating at zero income, you're technically running in the negative because you have bills that are accruing that month. And those were piling up very quickly. And on my end, I did not pay myself for the better part of 4.5 years. So when unemployment was based off the income you made the previous year, I made zero. So my unemployment was non-existent. And so I had to figure out how to get income to support my family. Because number one, how I got here in the last few years, I know that immediately leads into how did you, make ends meet? My wife worked for the better part of the first few years at the store, and then my family and my extended family helped us out in the last, the last several years to help us get by until the business really set off. And I was actually about to start paying myself back in January, and then obviously March hit, and then everything got cut off. And so, I digress. We were facing a situation where everything was piling up, and keep in mind, my name is on all these loans, all the finances, all the credit cards. And so, when they're coming knocking on your door, we're the ones at risk here. And so we couldn't risk no longer working at nothing, racking up these bills. And then on top of that, we had to worry about the insurance for my children and my family. And, our livelihoods, because my family all got affected because they all run small businesses. And so we were all scared. And the logical decision for me to make at the time was to file for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. It was just the only decision to make because, we weren't going to be able to survive at that point. And so, but, with that said, that would mean that the business was shut down, assets would get liquidated, the courts would come in, and pretty much my personal wages would be garnished for however many years going into the future until those debts were paid off. I calculated that, and I was offered a position at my previous company. And so when I did all the calculations, it was the best move that we could make because everything would just be covered, and we would be scraping by, but we would be working really hard for a few years. I would say about 5-6 years, and we'd be out of it. Because my wife would eventually go back to work, because my boys would start going to school, etc. But that also meant that the last 5 years of sweat equity, all the money that we've poured in, all the resources that my family poured in, and then obviously the people who invested into the company in the last 5 years would just lose everything. And it's a no win-win situation. If anything, we were at risk to lose the most. But it was the smartest decision. Even some of the business partners had agreed at the time, like, that's what you should do to take care of yourself. Because at the end of the day, none of them were willing to just inject money in the middle of a pandemic when they had to take care of their respective families and whatnot. But another option came up, and that was my family coming in with pulling what resources we had left, to see if we can just keep the business afloat for another 6 to 9 months. Change the store around, renovate it, become an essential business, doing the Mart thing, and then just scraping by. We had to renegotiate with the landlord. We had to renegotiate with some of the loan companies. But even with that, I had calculated X amount of dollars per month that we were going to need to cover everything. I discussed in length with my wife, my family, my in-laws, and they all kind of agreed that giving up and closing the business because of this virus would have been such a waste of the last 5 years. It's not like we failed and we lost to a competition or anything. And so they decided to present something to... Sorry, guys, this one take turned into a 3-part series, apparently, because people just keep walking in. And now I have customers they need this very computer to play on. So I'm going to wrap this up here really quick. So I went from... Where was I at? This is truly raw. We're doing this live here. No, it went from... So my family looked at everything, and we had enough to cover the business for about 6 to 9 months. And keep in mind, the loans that I have were all special finance loans. So these are loans that are paid back between 6 months to a year. And that's quite an aggressive term. So think about if you bought a brand new car, the only reason why you're paying $200, $300 a month is because it's being stretched out 5 to 7 years. But if you lower it to just 6 months to a year, those payments are very aggressive. So with all those in mind and everything, we thought, well, what's the worst case? At the end of 6 to 9 months, if we make it there and we're still having to file for Chapter 7, the hope is that between the 6 to 9 months, we significantly lower the amount of debts and credits that we're owed, or we find someone that might be willing to buy the business, or we make it out of it. So we were able to just get by, reinvent the business a little bit, and then maybe post-COVID, in the post-COVID world, we actually survived and we can just keep continuing on. In that scenario, obviously it's a win-win because then, because the agreement that was made, and then this is what was presented. So this is probably where the confusion is coming from about what happened with the former business partners, is that we agreed that that I would take over the business again. So ownership would come back to me and my family because of the additional capital we were putting in. Also, if I were to quit and go back to work, the company would just fold just because there's no one else that was going to step up and run the company. So instead of losing everything, the agreement was made to give me full operational and full ownership back of the business. But in return, if I'm able to get the business out of this rut, we're able to survive COVID, get out of it, turn around, pay off all the debts, and we're in profit, then the agreement was made that the business partners would receive an agreed upon amount per share, which for most people would end up more than breaking even, or if in certain cases making a good interest. And so what we did was, so in the case of me surviving and just being in profit, they would get dividend payments until they got their agreed amount of money back. The other scenario was if we sold the business. So let's say in the future I just end up selling for a decent value. So that amount was also agreed upon, so that even if I sold it for X amount of dollars, they would receive up to maximum certain amount of dollars. So meaning that they would get their investment plus interest back, depending on the amount we sold for. So at the end of the day, it was to protect everyone, because if I just gave up back in April, it was just a no-win situation for everyone. Everyone lost, and we're just done. But we wanted to give the business one more chance. So we, we went back. I think it wasn't a unanimous decision, because a handful of them wanted me to just file for Chapter 7 and just focus on my family, which I really do appreciate. But the majority of them decided to sign on for that, for the hope that I can dig us out of this, we can survive COVID, and then they can eventually get their investments back. And that's what it was. So that's why that post really hurt me, really hit me right here, because if that was a former business partner, that only means they want us to fail and not get their investments back, which kind of confuses me. But the thing is, if we do succeed, that's coming back to them. I'm not trying to steal anything here. I'm trying to protect everyone's original investments here. So that's me addressing that statement directly. You can actually come in. And then probably some former business partners can vouch for that. But that's kind of where we're at. And for those of you who might say, well, why bother saving a business that's running in the negative? Again, I'm going to reiterate, I've been playing catch up with my business plan for the better part of the last 5 years. If you were to start off another Gamer's Heaven with its current setup with a proper investment in the beginning, much different story in the first few years of business than I did. With that said, we got people coming in. I gotta stop recording here. I will say hello, everyone. This is how raw this is right now. I have a person in front of me. My regulars are here, and don't worry for those of you worrying about the mask situations. Everything is set about 7 to 8 feet apart from one another, so we're okay. But I'm gonna put it back on. But if you guys have any specific questions that you guys would like to ask, please leave a comment down below. I will be deep diving into other aspects of the business as well too, in terms of the operations and all that stuff, and what will actually go into running the business, and other things that I've learned in the last 5 years that might be able to help you out. But definitely wanted to address that post directly first, because that's been bothering me in the back of my mind for the last few weeks. So I was glad I was able to do that. But again, definitely let me know if you want me to continue content like this by leaving a like, subscribing, and leaving a comment. So until then, see you guys in the next video.